welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another AFL round review. Ladies and gentlemen, we are through 19 rounds of the AFL. Where does this footy season go? But when you're having fun, you're enjoying it. So let's hop on and let's talk with my co-host for this round. If you've seen my podcast, you know that this is one of my favorite Brisbane Lion fans, and I had to get her on because I love talking footy, especially somebody in NRL country. Let's welcome back Lori. Lori, great to see you again.
Oh, hi, Donny. How are you?
I am not doing too bad. I know that Queensland may not have had the greatest sports weekend. I know, unfortunately, the Maroons fell a little short in the state of
Yeah,
origin, and Gold Coast didn't do so well. And we'll definitely discuss our two teams having a crack at each other. And I think probably hard to argue that that and the Friday night footy games were probably games of
yeah,
the round. So, but things are going
definitely.
well, and I know that things are going, as you said, pre-Mike, a little bit chilly, blustery up in Brisbane, but it's Brisbane, so it'll get back to nice and tropical here very, very soon. So let's jump into it. We're through round 19, 19 rounds over, 19, as we said, some absolute classics, a few duds here and there, but some really good
Mm.
footy being played in the AFL. Your thoughts on round 19 as a whole?
There's a lot going on, isn't there? I think the main thing is just the importance of having a fit list, and that's going to be a big key factor as the top eight sort of crystallize in the coming weeks. And we saw some injuries this week, started having some players coming back, and so I think that's going to help dictate how some of the teams go, who might be a bit borderline is keeping that list depth and keeping them really healthy. Um, my thoughts in terms of teams, one big one. I don't think Essendon are ready for finals after what I saw on Friday night. And I think Collingwood are gone. Gonski, see you, Collingwood. Sorry. See you next year.
You're saying sorry? I ain't sorry. I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
kidding. I'm just kidding. No, I'm 100% with you. Unfortunately, I have zero confidence in Collingwood now. That's a good Hawks team, but I'm not sure if they're that much better than Collingwood. This is literally a season for Craig McRae. Just chuck it in the bin. You're fine. You got a premiership the last year. I think it's a little bit of injury, it's a little bit of arrogance, a little bit by the squad, and I think it's a little bit of Craig McRae. As you can definitely tell, he's still relatively young in his head coaching days, and I don't think he knew how to pull this team in when they needed it. Just I don't know what it was. The hunger is gone. It's not there. The aura of the never out of it pies is gone.
Yes.
And I
Yep.
think he doesn't know how to pull them back in. He'll learn. I think he'll get it figured out. Craig McRae, too good a coach. He's too good a coach
Yeah.
not to. He'll eventually figure it out. But this is a Collingwood Magpies team that I think if they're really really looking to be back in flag contention, the list is going to need some changes. I've seen it. There's 8 30-year-olds on this list.
Yeah.
It's a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah.
And it's some of their best players. You have the Jordan DeGoeys, the Steel Side Bottoms, and the Scott Pendlebury's.
Pendles.
Some of your
Yeah.
bigger impacting players are under it. You can't rely on Nick Dacos to win you every game. It's just not going to happen. He's a little ripper. He's fantastic, but
Yeah.
he's not going to be able to do it for you the whole time. And Essendon, I think they're a little bit of flat track bullies. They've caught a few teams at just the right times, but it's like when they've stepped up against the teams that are in the eight or right there, they've just fallen short. And this is a Crows team. Again, this is a Crows team completely underperformed this season. There's no argument. They've
Yep.
underperformed from where they were. They fought some injuries too, but not nearly to the extent as some teams. Adelaide's just it's been formed for Adelaide for them. And with Essendon, I think it's just they're just running into that teams want it more. They're a little bit of why they're in the eight is being exposed a little bit. And unfortunately, their run home isn't much easier. And Collingwood, same thing. Their road is not much easier. So I'm 100% with you. I think, unfortunately, we may be putting a line through both the Dons and the Pies for this particular season. So let's jump into it. We will go through it. We kind of talked a little bit. An absolute classic on Friday Night Footy as the Crows over at Marvel Stadium nip the Dons by two, 115, 113. And I got to say it, Ben Keys, you ripper. 5 goals for Ben Keys with an absolute man of the match type of performance in this one.
Yeah. He just made the most of his moments, didn't he? And
Mhm.
I'm very proud of him. He's a former Lion, got delisted, got his second shot through Adelaide, and has just gone from strength to strength over the last few years there. Um, he just made the most of every opportunity. I think he had 22 disposals, but God, they all counted, didn't they?
Mhm. Yeah, he did everything he needed to do, whether it was goals, whether it was score involvement. He just was everywhere that he needed to be. I mean, the Dons didn't play horribly. They didn't play horribly. It's just
No,
that
no.
this was a game of runs. Both teams had their time of utter dominance. I think Adelaide ripped out early, and the Dons come roaring back in to get the lead, and then the Crows kind of found a way to take it over late. Just then back and forth that last couple of minutes. So it's just these are the games I absolutely love. I don't love the scoreboard as a coach because I'm like, okay, where was the defense? I was like,
Yes,
I
100%.
mean, this
But
looks
as
like
a
an
fan, what a game, right?
oh yeah,
Imagine
oh yeah,
being there live. It
oh
would
yeah.
be fantastic.
As a neutral and as somebody that just wants to enjoy the footy being played at its best possible way, it's fantastic. But as somebody that detests the NBA because I don't like that there's no
Yeah.
defense, 115,
Yes, yes.
113 is a little too much for my coaching heart. But as a neutral, just pure footy fan, it was amazing. It was a fantastic game of
And a thriller
football.
right down to the last few seconds, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. So Josh Rostelli, you superstar. And I know some in Adelaide wanted him dropped because he wasn't performing up to what I think a lot of people expected when he was brought in. But for him to put that home, and then my favorite part is to find the Crows fan in the front row and him give him the hug, just like what was it? Um her God, for Essendon, can't remember his name, but the same thing, like finds the fan and gives him a full-fledged hug. It's great. What a visual.
Would have been an awesome moment.
Oh yeah, that Crows fan is probably going to be famous in Crows Nation just because he gave a hug to Joshua Shelley after that goal. It was fantastic. So I love those. The interaction with the fans is great. So absolutely love it. So all right, we'll jump to NG Stadium, and unfortunately, the Gold Coast Suns continue to be the Jekyll and Hyde that is. Road Suns can't win a game. Home Suns can't lose. So we're at NG Stadium in Sydney. So the Gold Coast Suns fall to the GWS Giants 89-50. But as a Sydney fan who has a soft spot for the Giants as much as they are the rival of the Swans, the Giants are starting to find form, and it's scary for the competition because Jesse Hogan is absolutely in fuego this year.
Yeah,
He's right up there
he
at the
is.
right up there in the Coleman medal. You've got Toby Green, you've got Tom Green, you've got some absolute superstars. You still have Sam Taylor still to come back from his
Yeah.
unfortunate, shall we say, man injury. That's how we'll be nice about that one. Just this is a Giants team. They're fighting for him at the right time. And the Suns, again, I love you, Dimma. I just don't know if you're going to make finals unless you can find a way to start winning one on the road. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. And look, Ben King's going to be doing some kicking practice all week, isn't he?
mhm.
7 shots on goal for 3 behinds was it was actually heartbreaking to watch, and you really felt for him. I guess being a bit crushed under the weight of expectation over those 7 shots, and so I really hope he finds form soon. But yeah, the Giants, they're always been there and about over the last few seasons. Lockie Whitfield had a great performance with over 40 disposals off half back, got that ball moving forward really nicely. Um, and look, Sam Flanders does an excellent job for the Suns. He's in my super coach team. I love that guy. He is so reliable week in, week out. But that's not enough. You need your midfielders to be punching forward, and they just were found wanting. at Energy Stadium in front of only 8,000 fans. Bit of a worry, but geez, they were loud.
Yeah, it's the Giants fans are quite the interesting bunch there. Again, I love the passion of the ones that I know. They're at the games, they go, they support it. It's just it's the really weird, like, to go off the NRL discuss part that I threw in earlier, is that is heartland of Sydney NRL. And I
Yeah.
think the Giants have just struggled to get a lot of the people on board over in the
Mm.
West. I'm hoping it happens. I'm hoping that consistency when it comes to finals attendance, and maybe even a premiership in the next 5 years, maybe could start some turn people over on on the western side of Sydney. Because this continues, I almost kind of agree, is, do you move the team to Canberra? Because Canberra has really embraced the team. I know it's a smaller stadium, but Canberra sells out
Mm.
every game that the Giants play there. So
Yeah.
you have an argument that Canberra could be a good place if it's just not sustainable in Western Sydney. And again, I don't want that to happen. This is not red hat Sydney Donnie going, yeah,
Mm.
get out of Sydney, get out of it. No, I want them to be successful in the western part of Sydney, but it's
Mm.
disheartening when you're only getting 8,000 and you've had games earlier this season where you've sold it out. Now, a little bit of it is some of the road teams where Collingwood helped sell it out because Collingwood travels.
Yeah.
Sydney went over
Yeah.
there, nearly sold out NG Stadium with with two-thirds of the fans being Swans fans. Again, when the Swans are up and about, the Swans fans are everywhere, it seems like. So I just want the Giants to be able to kind of click with the western part of Sydney and start getting people
Yeah.
more interested in the sport. Again, it's the growth of the sport that I'm more focused on, not the rivalry. So don't get
Yeah.
me wrong.
Yeah.
I don't
100%.
want them to move to Canberra because I don't want them there. I want them to move to Canberra if it is just not sustainable to really make the club be able to be successful, not just on the
Yeah.
field but off as well. I'm hoping it's getting a turn for the better, but right now that's a little disheartening that a team that's in finals contention looks to potentially they're cracking on the doorstep of top four, and you can only get 8,000 people. Now, it's the Gold Coast Suns again, which unfortunately trying to find a Gold Coast Sun is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. It's the same thing. Two relatively new teams. It's not easy to change your allegiance, and some people give you stick if you change your allegiance to one of these new clubs. So we'll have to see. Again, Dimma, I think he's got himself some talent. They'll be fine. This is the headache year. This is the year where if you have too many expectations, you're going to be disappointed. And I think that's what a
Yeah.
lot of people are running into. There are people, they're going to make finals this year. And I went, have you not seen this team in the last 10 years? Because
Yeah.
what do you have? And again, Dimma, great coach, but that was with Richmond. I'm not gonna put Richmond Dimma at Gold Coast because he's got to coach differently. It's not the same list.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Is he a good coach? Yes. Is he going to be a premiership coach at Gold Coast? That's still up for debate because I
Yeah.
still believe I love that he went up there. I still believe he's a little off on his percentage of how many of his premiership team are on the list now. I think it's less
Yeah.
than 80%. I think it's closer to 60, maybe even 50. There's still
Yeah.
going to be some turnover because there's some veterans that are not going to want to stay for another 3 years to get to a premiership.
Yeah.
There's some youngsters that are not going to want to stay in Gold Coast. They're going to go to another team. It's going to
Yeah.
happen. They're starting to get people to resign, which is absolutely fantastic. Again, I'm stating this again as a commentator, not as a fan. As a commentator, I want them to stay together. I just don't see it because Dimma will drive people away. Mabio Chol didn't stay, and he would have been
No.
fantastic for this team.
Yeah.
Where's he at? He's at Hawthorn, but he played
And
for
doing well.
Richmond. But he played for
Yeah.
Richmond. So what
Mm.
does that tell you about his relationship with Dimma Hardwick? So there's some things that they don't want to discuss. Now, seeing Lukosius, seeing some of these really good players resign,
Yeah.
fantastic. And I'm hoping it leads to more success. Again, I just think this is just is not the year. Give Dimma another year before we start talking finals for the Gold Coast Suns. If you can't win on the road, you can't go very far in finals, especially considering they're going to be
No.
a bottom four side. If they get in, they're going to be eighth or seventh, which means, oh,
Yeah.
guess what? You got to go on the road for that elimination final. So
Yeah.
you may get in, but you may just be making up numbers. So, which again,
But just such an improvement in terms of their season this year. So,
mm,
and they've got a long runway of exciting academy prospects over the
mm,
coming years. So there's definitely a lot of upside for Gold Coast, and I think all of Queensland wants to see two strong Queensland teams. It's in our interest, and the AFL is growing so strongly in the school system down on the Gold Coast. So
mhm.
they won't be down in the bottom 10 for long.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting. I saw somewhere somebody put out the statistic. This is the first year that there are more youth playing footy in Queensland than in South Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Wow.
footy country. And
Yeah.
there's more young men and women playing footy in Queensland than there is
Yeah.
South Australia. So that just shows
Yeah.
you how much it's growing in Queensland, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm hoping,
Yeah.
crossing my fingers, that it starts to trickle down into New South Wales a little bit, which would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not trying to take away anything from NRL. I think NRL again is a fantastic product, but seeing footy become the national sport that I think it can be would be fantastic. So, not to go on a
Absolutely.
tangent
Absolutely.
there, not to go on a tangent there, but you're in NRL again. Our teams are in NRL country, so there's a little bit of us that wants that footy to just get a little bit more of a foothold into those particular
Oh, yeah.
states. So, we'll jump to Marvel Stadium, where I have to be honest. I saw this game on the roster and I went, "Oh, please, just be somewhat entertaining." It kind of
So
was.
dour.
It kind of was, but it wasn't. As the St. Kilda Saints get a 72-point win, 113-41. I mean, I'll just be honest. I mean, the Saints, more talent. West Coast again, I think they're trying to limp their way through the rest of this
Yeah.
season. They just let go of Simo, and again, I don't think this was any bit at all his fault. I think this is plain and simply this is on the list management because they spent way too long babying some of their older players onto this list, thinking that they were still in premiership contention after 2018.
Yeah.
I've said that, and I keep getting proved right because you look at their list, it's extremely old or extremely young. There is
Yeah.
no guts to this team. There's no 25 to 28-year-old players that you can lean on. Nope. It's 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, 30 to 35-year-old veterans. Nothing
Yeah.
in between. Or what is in between are not your superstar players. They're your
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
your
They're role
role
players.
players that
Yeah.
make a little bit of an impact, but not really. So, and with the Saints, sucks to see Liam Henry go down with a knee injury. I think he's done for the year,
Yeah.
unfortunately, which really stinks. This is a Saints team again. Ross Lyon, stop being Ross Lyon and just do something different, sir, because it's dour footy. Why can't you play like you did against Sydney with some attack? Am I wrong here?
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard going, wasn't it? And it was really quite error filled at times. And but the Saints got over the line. Obviously, West Coast had a bit of a jump last week when they played the Lions at home, first game under the new coach. But there was no momentum coming into this week where they've had to travel east over to Melbourne. No McGovern, no Yo, no Duggan, and
No
just
win.
nothing happening really, was there? So
No.
yeah, it was a game we all sort of suffered through, didn't we? But
It,
good job for Membry getting 5 goals. That was exciting for
yeah,
him, and
it was great
Mason
to
Wood's
see.
a star winger, isn't he?
Yeah, he's really found his niche at St. Kilda. It's absolutely fantastic. He's impacting the scoreboard, which you don't always get for some midfielders. So for him to do what he did was absolutely magnificent. So let's jump over to it. We got to talk about this next one. We got to MCG. The reigning premiers get absolutely whooped like a disobedient child, 133-67. And the talk of the town is the man, Jack Ginnivan, absolutely giving it to his old side and being helped out by a rowdy, raucous, and fun team to watch. This young Hawks team.
Yeah.
They're arrogant a little bit, but you don't mind it because they're talented enough they can get away with it. And they're celebrating. They look like a connected group. This is a Hawks team. I've said it for the last month and a half. If they get into finals, they are going to be dangerous.
Absolutely. Anything can happen on the day, can't it? When you're young and you're vibrant, and you've got energy and you've got nothing to lose. They remind me of the Pies of 2 years ago when they came out and suddenly fun was the theme. It's like the Hawks have taken that idea and run with it. And Collingwood were certainly left wanting during the game. But no, it's so exciting to see the Hawks play. And for me, probably my second favourite game of the round because Collingwood lost. And I loved watching those fans all look very uncomfortable in their seats.
Yeah, it's and to add to it too, they had to sit through the pissing down rain down in Melbourne too.
It looked miserable and cold, didn't it?
But the Hawks were having fun. The Hawks fans were absolutely in rapture. It was great. I mean, seeing Nick Watson, Ginnivan, CJ Jath, some of this, I mean, Jai Newcomb, Will Day. I mean, they've got a great list. This is a Hawthorne team that, again, I don't think Sam Mitchell was probably expecting what he's getting this year, and it's fantastic to see. We'll switch over to the other side. Again, I'll give it to him. Collingwood, they've had a rash of injuries. They just everything that could go wrong for this Pies team has. Darcy Moore out of form, injuries up the wazoo. Dan McStay is just now coming back. You can definitely tell he was rusty as all get out in this game. Great to see him back from his ACL, but you could definitely tell it was maybe a game early, but they kind of needed it. And then just they're leaning on Nick Dacos a little too much.
Yeah,
Let's just be honest, they are. DeGoey out of form, Pendlebury out of form, Sidebottom out of
very.
form, Josh Dacos out of form, Isaac Quaynor not playing as well as he can. I don't know why Murphy was so dang important to this team, but you can tell it's like they're five lost children with an extra person running around. The defense is just in shambles. And
Yep.
I don't know what Coach Fly can do because it just is a constant problem. And I don't know what it is. And again, I don't like attacking players personally. Like the over the top attacking of Darcy Moore. Again, the guy's not playing well. Is he a great player? Yes. Is he having a good season? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think even Darcy's admitted it himself. He's just not having a good year. He's not reading things. He doesn't have that safety blanket that was Murphy. Okay, he doesn't.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
here's the thing that I have a problem with. We are 19 rounds through the darn season. How have you not figured it out yet? How have you not
Yeah.
found some kind of remedy? I mean, it's a little, and I hate using this word, but I'm gonna say it's a little pathetic, really. You are 19 rounds of the season, you haven't figured this out. You knew
Mm.
about this was a problem at the start of the year when he was sitting out because he was being conservative with his concussion thing. Okay. He has been out the entire season, never played a single second of footy this season. You are 19 rounds, meaning you are over 4 months into the season and you haven't figured it out. What the hell? I'm sorry,
Mm.
Coach Mix. That's on you, Coach. That's on you. That had to be figured out.
And I
Mm.
think also having Nick Dacos playing more midfield minutes, um, he does provide so much forward attack off the halfback line, which
Mm-hmm.
he was just so successful. But I think a lot of the teams have really worked out Collingwood. It's been
That
really
too.
interesting to see teams adjust. So that when they get that mad, crazy attack running forward, that's all a little bit nuts, the teams are keeping calm and knowing how to corral that. And they're finding that possession footy makes a huge difference and really nullifies Collingwood.
Mm-hmm.
If you can hold your marks against Collingwood and slow things down and wait and be patient, all of a sudden holes will open and you can attack and really maximize your opportunity. So I think teams have had a couple of seasons and they've really started to work them out. And those
Mm-hmm.
close games, Collingwood have started losing instead of winning. So all of a sudden, they're not as high up the ladder as they would have been otherwise.
Yeah, completely agree. And Fly is starting to get frustrated. And the other thing I'm seeing too is when they do turn the ball over, teams are pressuring them back. I think teams were
Yeah.
sitting back trying to play defensively, and it doesn't work. You almost kind of, as soon as you turn the ball, you kind of have to become Collingwood. You have to attack them. Because
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
do, they'll make an error, turn it over, and because everybody is pushing up forward on offense, then you get numbers out the back. We saw several games where guys are getting the Joe Magoo or Joe the whatever it is, the cherry picking goal over the top because
Oh yeah.
one
Yeah.
forward slips out the back. Darcy Moore comes up to pressure the footy, one handball over. Okay, oh, it's Joe the
Yeah.
Goose, I think is how as I've heard it called, and just they're kicking it from the goal line. I mean, plump,
Yeah.
that's an easy 6 points. So again, will Collingwood figure it out? We'll have to see. I'm not sure because I don't unless they find a way to do something just the tiniest bit different. I don't know if that style is going to work. I mean, they had the magical run last year, won the premiership, and again, not to bring up evil scars on that one for you, Lori. I know, unfortunately, that grand final, if it had been 3 minutes longer, I think we could have had a different result. I mean, the Pies just they did everything they needed to do, but it wasn't super impressive. Their finals run, I mean, I think they
Mm.
won all of the three finals games by a total of like
Just.
12 points or something like that. It was something ridiculous. So is the magic gone? Did they burn the candle on both ends for too long? And we'll have to see how that goes because the list is going to need to do some changes. But again, I don't want to take any flowers from the Hawks. The Hawks were magnificent on the MCG. I cannot wait to watch this young side grow, which is really where's the Swans fan because there was always that rivalry with Hawthorn
Mm.
during the late 2000s into the early 2010s. Um, but I got to give it the Hawks they're fun to watch. They are absolutely fun to watch. Speaking of fun to watch games, we jumped down to GMHBA Stadium where the 1970s has called back in. They want their footy back because this was a wet, muddy
Oh, it was
slog of a
awful.
game, and
Yeah.
the doggies, ladies and gentlemen, go into the Cattery and get a huge win. 47 points, 95-48. And the talk of this game is the man Rory Lobb. Yes, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen, the guy I've said numerous times is an addition via subtraction from Fremantle was the difference in this game. He's gone back taking over for Liam Jones, and Lord Almighty, is Rory Lobb a defender?
Isn't he just? Amazing job on Jeremy Cameron. Kept into six disposals, only kicked the one goal. And he still managed to get 21 or so disposals himself. So a great coaching move, perhaps by Bevo. I mean, I think he's about 206 centimeters. So he's going to be valuable somewhere on the field. We don't want to lose him, but it was a mighty effort from him and really helped shore up the back line for the Dogs. That surface looked absolutely terrible at the beginning of the game, and I do feel sorry for the property stewards who've got to clean the white shorts and the white stripes on poor old Geelong's jerseys. Love the retro jersey, thought it was fantastic.
Mhm.
But yeah, certainly. Um, I'm a big Sean Manor fan, so I was really excited to see how he went with the Cats. But it was all Adam Treloar and Ed Richards for the Dogs. They were fantastic, got on the scoreboard multiple times, and it was just relentless pressure, wasn't it, from the Dogs? The Geelong Cats defence were all at sea.
Yeah, 100% on that one. It's a Cats team this year that they've had their moments of good, bad, and ugly. And unfortunately, this was one of the ugly ones. So we'll definitely have to see how this goes again. Like, I'm still in shock that Rory Lobb did what he did to Jeremy Cameron because if you'd have told me before the game Bevo's going to put Lobb on Cameron, I went, is he an idiot? Like I would have legitimately snorted and laughed at you because there's no way I would have thought that Lobb would have done what he did to Jeremy Cameron because with Cameron's running ability, able to get up the field, his pace that he has, the fact that he's so dangerous with goal on hand, both on the ground and in the air. For Rory Lobb to do that, man, legitimately, I tip my cap to you, sir.
Yeah,
Bevel looks like a friggin' genius with that one. And it just shows you how dangerous the doggies can be on their day. My issue I have with the doggies is they're so darn inconsistent. They have this game, fantastic. My worry is
yeah,
this next one will get the exact opposite. They'll be
yeah,
anemic at best because Jamaro Ulahagen, Naughton, and Darcy there are games they're absolutely all on, and then there's games where they
Yeah.
all disappear like apparitions. So we'll have to see. Again, great win by the doggies. Puts the Cats a little bit under the pump a little bit. The doggies still fighting for that chance to make finals, but an impressive 4 points that they were really, really, really not expected going down to the Cattery. So great win in the ultimate battle of the rivals, dogs and cats. So I thought that was hilarious when somebody said the oldest rivalry in the world, dogs versus cats. So had to chuckle at that one. So we will jump over to the Adelaide Oval where Port Adelaide did what they needed to do, knocking off beating the Richmond Tigers by 41, 116-75. And I don't know about you, but I mean, as a mother of a couple of young boys, I mean, do we need to put Zach Butters in timeout because he got another fine and has now taken over as the most fined player in AFL history?
He's ahead of Toby Green, believe it or not. His
Crazy.
banker is the busiest fellow in Adelaide at the moment.
I
He
want to
is
know what I
handing
want to
out
know what
money
his girlfriend
everywhere.
or I want to know what his girlfriend or spouse thinks of this because she's like, dude, you're throwing away money. What the hell?
$36,000. Unbelievable. He's 23 years old. It's not like he's 32 and got the AFL record. He's still so early in his career. He's going to hit six digits at this rate. So,
Hmm.
yeah, he really needs to pull his head in and have a look at how he's approaching some of these contests and how hard he is going. You can still have an impact doing those sorts of maneuvers without being so hard and drawing a fine. It's just unnecessary and it's only hurting himself. It's really not helping anybody.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's an interesting fellow, isn't he? But look, um, I wasn't that impressed with Port's performance. It's against Richmond at home, and it was even for three quarters. Port kicked away in the final quarter, and Charlie Dixon looked fantastic. He is so strong under that ball deep. It's so impressive, and I loved it. And the Port midfield did their job and did enough, but really, it's against a depleted Richmond side, and it was really only in the final quarter. So I wasn't as taken by the win as perhaps others might be.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. The fact that the fact that you let a depleted Richmond side that I mean literally is being held by any adhesive they can find this year, and with rumors coming out now that Dusty is checked out per se with air quotes, again,
Absolutely.
it's not this isn't Richmond of 2 years ago when they were fighting for flags and they were perennial top eight side. This is a Richmond team that literally they are bottoming out in sensational manner. Again, I don't like it. It's not good for the competition when a once mighty club that had several flags in a short time span absolutely face plants on the concrete with spectacular form. So this is a Port team again. There's several teams this season that I literally look and I go Jekyll and Hyde. There's the
Mm.
Jekyll ugly, and then there's the Hyde beautiful. This is a Hyde
Yeah.
performance for Port. They get the win, but there were teases of Jekyll early in the game when Richmond was staying in this game. So I don't want to
Mm.
spend a ton of time on this. Again, I agree with you. Charlie
Yeah.
Dixon, my worry, can Charlie Dixon stay healthy? If he stays healthy and can stay dominant, Port's a real worry for some teams. My issue is that in 3 games, Charlie Dixon could be sitting on the bench with an injury, which again, I don't want to happen, but it just seems that his body just keeps letting him down when they really, really need him. And if he leaves the team, you have Marshall, you have Georgiades, but you don't really have that focal point
Yeah.
full forward
That's
to
right.
go to. And so they really do kind of need him. So we'll have to see how he goes again. Again, I touch wood. I hope he doesn't, but unfortunately his track record is not good. We'll go to the game that you and I both had our eyes absolutely glued to, and a lot of people, I think, had their eyes glued to this one come mid fourth quarter because this was an absolute belter as the Lions nipped the Swans by two, 79-77, in another game of the round slash game of the season because many
Yes.
people went into this game saying this could potentially be a preview of the grand final. And if this is what we get for a grand final, Please give it to me again. I don't care what the result is. This was a magnificent game of footy. Brisbane jump out really quickly, jump the Swans again. Swans, as per usual, start off slow, not so well. Second quarter, the Swans kind of go, you know what? We're the Sydney Swans. Here we go. And they go on a 4 goal run really quickly in like a minute and a half. And then it was an arm wrestle the rest of the game with Brisbane pulling it out late. Cal Archie, you ripper, putting one home with like a minute and a half to go,
Yep.
tearing the hearts out of many Swans fans for sure. But again, I can't not give my plot. It's Brisbane. They got it done where they needed to. This was a magnificent game of football.
And got it done without their key players firing. So Neil was kept quiet. Dunkley was pretty quiet as well. His output wasn't as high as normal. So our next tier down, your Zach Baileys and your Cam Rayners and your Hugh McCluggage, Hugh's starting to earn his $1 million a season. Um,
Mhm.
they stepped up and performed really, really well. I was really excited to see Shadow Brain pop up and get a few intercept marks in the final quarter. It was really exciting for
Mhm.
that next generation to come through. Um, I love seeing Charlie Cameron in the ruck. That was an inspired decision by Chris Bacon.
Man,
He won it.
the announcers took the Mickey out of that one so bad. They're like, it's Charlie Cameron, the great ruckman of our generation. And literally, it was almost like Grundy put his arm on top of Charlie Cameron's head as they were saying it. I literally went, I can't not chuckle at this. And then, as you said, the ball drops just the right way that Charlie actually wins the tap. And I was just like,
It was
oh,
fantastic. It was like under 12s again, where there's this big kid and there's this little kid who's kind of ended up in the ruck, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I thought Oscar did a really good job on Brody Grundy, to
yeah.
be honest. I've been such a big Oscar fan.
Oscar's a very underrated ruck.
Yeah,
I tell many people for as big a guy as he is, as lumbering as he may look, he gets the job done and can get
yeah,
around the ground so well. He's so undervalued by a lot of people outside of Brizzy that I sit here and I get frustrated sometimes because there are some rucks that don't get the plaudits that Max Gawn, the Brody Grundys, the English, the
yeah.
Rowan Marshalls, the Karen Briggs, the Sean Darcy's and the Oscar McInerney's, these big lumbering guys that you don't think are going to have the tanks that they do. And they
Yeah.
do. And then they pull performances like that. Oscar McInerney was fantastic. He went with Brody Grundy. Brody Grundy could not get kind of that establishment as that fifth midfielder for Sydney. He was
Yes. Yeah.
constantly having to deal with Big O, which I love Big O. I think he's hilarious. I think he's an absolutely fantastic player. I heard he's a ripping bloke. I've heard some interviews with him.
Yeah.
A great personality. This was just fantastic. I have to give a hat tip. Will Hayward, you absolute warrior,
Yes.
sprained his ankle
Absolutely.
mid third quarter and still continued to play, even kicking 2 goals, including one late
Yep.
that had some Swans fans going, are they going to steal it? Are they going to steal
Yeah.
4 points from the GABA? But again, Cal Archie said, hold my beer moment and took over. I got to give Hugh McCluggage that rolling goal that he had in the fourth quarter was absolutely insane. You could tell the fans absolutely lost their marbles when that happened. Just a fantastic game of footy. I think this was champagne footy. This was exactly what I think a lot of people were expecting and hoping. Sydney, unfortunately, the injury tolls really hurt them. Papley goes
Huge.
down with what looks like a pretty good syndesmosis, 4 to 6 weeks. He's done. We're already out without Roll Bottom, who has a facial fracture. They're hoping 2 weeks.
Mm.
Will Hayward could be back this round. I'm going to highly doubt
Yep.
it personally. I think he's going to need the rest because the soldiering on probably didn't help it. It didn't hurt it, but I don't think it helped it. It probably it's going to be really tender. I bet I've been on those before, at least 2 weeks for sure. So,
And
and
Rampy.
then and Rampy, they're
Mm.
hoping that it might be slight to the point where it may be only a week, but they're talking max 2 with him having it earlier in the season. I bet they'll be conservative and probably be 2 weeks. So the injuries come at kind of a bad time, but I also look at it too. You still have another 5 more rounds after this. So if you can get Rampy back, you can get Will Hayward back. All you're actually missing right now is Papley. You've got some small forwards sitting in the wings, so I think you'll be okay. Are they as dynamic as Papley? Probably not. But if you can get it to the point where Papley's coming back for that first final, maybe.
Mm,
Worst case scenario, a semifinal if they somehow are to drop it, or a preliminary final, you'll be. I think I don't think they're in danger zone as much as people are trying to make it off to be, because of the fact the
no.
worst injury is Papley 4 to 6, and 4 to 6 you're looking at being back the week of the finals bye,
Yeah. Yeah.
which means he could be back for that first final. Worst case scenario, he's back for a semifinal or preliminary final, which is perfect because you throw somebody
Yeah.
like that in at that time when you're facing a preliminary final to get to a grand final or a semifinal. So I don't think the Swans are as in bad a shape as some people want it to be, but again, being where they are in the ladder, I think people want them to come back to earth a little bit, which
Mm.
I completely
Yeah.
understand. So no,
That's
just
right. I was it was interesting to see Eric Hipwood got a fine for the tunneling against Blakey. I actually thought that was very generous of the AFL. And I thought he was done for all money when I saw that video. So
there are a lot of
um
Swans fans that are
yeah,
very, very not happy with that particular decision.
yeah.
They're
I
not
can
happy.
understand
And
that.
I completely get it because of the fact that hip it is I understand that they put careless. They go, it's careless in a very, very weird version of careless, because you see Hipwood drop his eyes. He's not even looking at the footy, and he hits
Yeah,
Blakey right in the bum, in
yeah.
the upper thigh, in the quad or the hamstring. And you could tell that as soon as he hit him, Blakey starts to tip forward. I'm
Oh
just like,
yeah.
that's that. If Blakey lands on his head, Blakey could
Mm,
be done for the year, if not even
yeah,
his
100%.
career. So it's very dangerous. Hipwood's a very lucky boy for not getting a
And I
suspension.
will say, as a Lions supporter, it was an absolute joy watching Errol Goulden's forward 50 entries. He's an absolute master. I love watching him play, and um, I'm glad we won, but golly, he's just such a force, isn't he?
Yeah, Isaac Keeney was a little bit quiet in this game. I love Errol.
Yeah.
The fact that he was the 31st, the fact that he was the 30th pick in the draft still makes me chuckle a little bit, because I know that with both of our clubs, you have the argument of, why do you have the academies?
Yeah.
You get great players like this. And I go, yeah, well, 29 other teams had a chance to pick him up and didn't.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So what's your argument?
Absolutely.
What's your argument? Chad Warner was pick 39. And he's a WA boy. He's not a Sydney. He's not an academy player like everybody wants him to they think he is. He's a WA boy. That's the reason why Fremantle wants him so bad right now, because he's from WA. Sydney has a very good recruiters, and they find gems in later rounds. I mean, Corey Warner, who comes in as the sub, kicks a goal in the game, pick
Yeah.
40.
Yeah.
So I mean, they found a way to draft well, and yes, they I'll admit it. Cal Mills, Isaac Keeney, Nick Blakey, some of their best players are academy picks. But it's not like Sydney's walking around with 5 rings on their fingers because they're 5-time premiership champions.
Yeah. Exactly.
Let
Exactly.
me recall, how many premierships have they had since the academy got started in 2012? Because in 2012 there were no academy players, because that was the last time Sydney won a premiership. So again, I repeat, where is the advantage for the Swans when they have 0 premierships? In fact, Victoria has more premierships as a whole, more than any of the interstate clubs combined, because since 2012, only one interstate team has won a premiership.
Yeah.
One, and that's West
Which is the
Coast
Eagles.
against
Yeah.
against Collingwood, in a game
Yeah.
that has some contention because of the blocking. So we won't go there. So as an interstate supporter, you and I, we kind of both understand this, especially northern with the academies. You kind of need the academies, because there's one thing that the Victorians, the South Australians, and the WAs don't have to worry about, and that's NRL clubs poaching their players.
Oh yeah, and young too. So young
Mhm.
kids who are in the academy right now are getting offered paid contracts from NRL clubs who are going in and looking for the best athletic talent. So it's a very present issue for those youth coming through who are sort of 15 to 17.
Yep. One of the Swans top academy kids who was going to be draft eligible this year just signed with I think this Newcastle, and he was 17
Yeah,
years old. And Sydney were really high on him, thought he had a great chance of potentially being an academy pick, and Newcastle signed him. So
yeah, happens all the time.
that's the massive difference
Yeah,
between the two. That like I don't think some of the the Victoria and the SA or WA fans don't get. It's these
mm,
academy players, sometimes the best don't even get through the academy because the NRL clubs go, "Hey, you look pretty talented. Here's $850,000 a year. How'd you like to play professionally now?" And they go,
yeah,
"Bye." So,
yeah. That's right. That's
unfortunately, so
exactly right.
all right, we'll hop on it. Well, as much as I would love to talk about that game again, fantastic at the Gabba again, Brisbane, well earned. What a magnificent game of footy. We jump out to the Optus Stadium where the Dockers again decide, hey Melbourne, come get you beaten because they beat them by 50 again, 116-66. I know that Melbourne is down, no gone, no Petrarca, but 50 points? Are you kidding me? Again, the Dockers, magnificent footy. They're starting to become that dark horse team that could really challenge for a flag if they stay in this red hot form with their center clearance dominance with Darcy and Jackson both going through the middle. Fremantle looking terrifying if they can keep up this form going into finals.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to play them in finals at home. I think they would just romp it in. They're just so electric over there. I mean, it was really hard for Melbourne. They had Harrison Petty as their ruck, and that poor fella couldn't buy a hit out all game. It was tough going. Um, but you know, Simon Goodwin himself has said, well, I've got no one else. Tom Fullerton isn't even winning the hitouts in the VFL,
VFL, yep,
so
I heard
we're
that.
here with Petty, right? So I do really feel for them. Gorn will be back soon, and that will help steady the ship a little bit. But their midfield is not performing to their potential. They've got Jack Viney, they've got Clayton Oliver, and Jack Viney started the season really well. Clayton's obviously had a lot of issues. And he hasn't really settled. And he has had a game or two that have looked promising, but it's just really not enough when you're against Sarong and Brayshaw. And, you know, it's Frio are really set now through their spine. I loved watching that corridor ball movement for them. And Melbourne just had absolutely nothing. And, you know, their backline's got Stephen May and Jake Lever, and they were outplayed comprehensively. The forwards were able to work them up the field and then drop out the back for Jai Amos and get some really easy goals.
Yeah, that's one of the things Fremantle loves. They love to pull defenses apart by separating and then using their pace. When you got Frederick, Tracy, and Amiss are surprisingly fast for as tall as they are, and then you throw in some of the speed. Sonny Walters having himself a heck of a game in this one too. So it's again, this Dockers team again, they're looking scary if they can keep this form going into finals because if they can slip into that other top two spot, if they can get that top two spot and get a home finals all the way up to the grand final, that is not an easy journey. It is not an easy place to play when Fremantle is up and about out west at Noptus. Fremantle has a good shot of getting to a granny if they can get that second, if they can get one of those top two spots. And again, with Carlton kind of hemming and hawing a little bit, definitely a possibility. So, in fact, speaking of Carlton, we'll jump to that. North Melbourne, again, they don't get the win again, but damn it, they did their best to try to give the absolute fear of God into Carlton as they fall just short by 19, 107-88. Charlie Curnow has found his accurate kicking as he kicks straight more than he doesn't. So, and pleasant, but I know it's a loss, but North Melbourne are impressing me. They are playing really good footy. They're not getting the chalkies, but they're playing some damn good footy. Maybe Clarko has finally found something at North Melbourne.
I think they've got a list with potential. You know, we're all huge admirers of Harry Sheezel. What an absolute legend of a kid, and such a talented player with a really steady head on his shoulders. Um, a couple of coach killers late in the game must have had Clarko pulling his hair out, which cost
Hmm.
them a couple of goals, and I felt made quite a difference in terms of momentum and confidence for the players. Yeah, I love North Melbourne. I think they've got a lot of upside, and I think next year is going to be a really exciting year for them. Um, Carlton, I love Sard. Gosh, he works so hard week in, week out. He's just so reliable and works so hard back and saves quite a lot of goals. So I'm a big Adam Sard fan. Sam Walsh got a bit bashed up, I thought, in the game. Um, but yeah, it was nice to see Kerno do well. Was a bit worried about Harry Mackay there. I think that's a huge issue for the AFL to sort out over the coming weeks, and I don't know whether they're going to be able to do it well enough. To be honest, that delay, I know he kicked a goal, but that delay was unnecessary and unreasonable in my mind.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely one of those where the AFL needs to find this off season is definitely going to be one of those that they're definitely going to have to sit down and powwow a little bit because it is unacceptable that players are being allowed to stay on the ground or even come back on the ground if there's any risk of if they've had any inkling of a head knock. And it's getting kind of the point where it's like everybody's made a big deal. We'll discuss this a little bit later too. All the
Yeah,
drama with all the with the tackling and the dangerous tackling. We'll discuss that a little bit later because I think it's got a lot of people really hyperbole everything and I'll discuss it. I'll explain this a little bit later. But they're almost over exaggerating the tackle issue and not talking
mm,
about this issue that is much more dangerous because there is significant evidence that a head knock has happened. This player could be concussed, yet they're allowed to continue to play. And that's very
yeah,
frustrating because you're sitting here as a organization trying to cut back because of the class action lawsuits, because of these guys wanting to keep them as healthy as possible, and you're allowing this stuff. I mean, the debacle of Port Adelaide a couple of years ago, where both elite with Aliir came back on after the sickening head knock
yeah,
that he took, and he was allowed to come back on the ground, which was absolutely infuriating that that was allowed. And the punishment was significant, but I just don't think it was significant enough because teams are still not taking this seriously at times. And I hate accusing these doctors of this. And I'm not accusing the doctors. I'm accusing just the fact that you got to take it with almost too much conservatism on it because it's this
mm,
player's welfares. Like there are players that are taking their own lives because of what's happening. And it's
yeah,
sad. It's very sad. And so I'm 100% with you. I hope Harry Mackay is healthy. He's okay. It's just it's very disheartening to see players come back on the or stay on the ground or come back on the ground after a head knock like that. Like you have to do what's best for the player. I know the player may not want it, but sometimes
yeah,
you have to overrule the player and save them from themselves. And I think that's the frustrating part
100%.
about it. So I hate to go I hate to go to such a deep subject on that one because that's not what I like to do because it's not the part of the game I want to celebrate. I want to celebrate the great footy, but it is something with all of the drama. In fact, I'm gonna change my order that I have this. Let's go right to it. As a footy fan, we'll go to the burning questions since we just finished that. As a footy fan, is it frustrating with this last lack of consistency with punishing dangerous tackles because I feel that they're trying to make exceptions to try to get players off to keep them in the game. And again, I understand the accidents happen. Okay. I really, really do. And some people are going to be like, but you're a coach when I say this. I still think the Toby Bedford tackle was unnecessary and it still should have been suspended. This is me personally because he has to dive to make the tackle, meaning he's making a dangerous move both for himself and for Tim Taranto because he has no control over what happens because he has to leap to make the tackle. I understand, coach, but you got to make a tackle to keep him from going. You don't because in the game, what if you miss and you get kicked in the face? Now you're out
Mm,
injured. There's just they don't talk about that because it didn't happen. Because he made the tackle, that's the only thing people want to talk about. What if he dives and misses and gets a boot right in the nose, breaks his nose, or concusses himself? He's taking a risk he didn't need to. I understand you're trying to play defense, you're trying to be a great player, but you're taking a risk that's potentially what could happen. If you miss, boot to the nose. Now you're
Mm,
out. So, is it just me? But I think that yes, there are going to be accidents. Okay, there are going to be accidents. It's going to happen. But I don't agree that all of these tackles that have gotten off weren't dangerous. Personally, your thoughts?
mm. My thoughts are AFL are kind of doing this on the run here,
Hmm.
and they're caught on the hop because of the court case. And we all acknowledge how important this subject is and how important and vital it is for the growth of the game to get this balance right. Because parents will start taking their kids out if they start seeing the cases mounting in terms of your CTE and your claims. So
Hmm.
it's super important. And I think they've looked at it and gone, geez, we can't wait till the end of the season. We can't be seen to do nothing. So they've started layering in these changes. But doing it mid-season is not a good idea. It doesn't
Hmm.
help anyone. It actually just has caused a lot of confusion and really bad publicity. Like, let's
Hmm.
be honest.
100%.
So I think you're right. At the end of this season, they'll have time to establish better concussion protocols, which I think are important. And I know the doctors are starting to ask for if you have a head injury that's been ascertained, you must be removed to do the head injury assessment, not allow a head injury assessment to occur on the run on the field. The doctors are quite keen for that change to come through, and I think that will be very effective. And then, secondly, let's get our heads around tackling a bit more because it's a big shift from the old way of tackling to what we're trying to do now, which is protect the head, which is absolutely vital. But there's a lot of learning and unlearning of tackling technique for a lot of players. Some of the players have played 300 games plus their youth games. So I'm not frustrated. I just sort of am accepting that it's a period of flux until we
Mhm.
find the right spot to land and I understand that the AFL really do have the players' best interests at heart, but I just don't think the execution on their behalf's been as good as it could have been.
Well, and again, maybe this is a little bit of the American brain in me. I don't get the appeal of a decision personally. I don't get it because if for the Australians that watch American sports, when an NFLer gets suspended, you're suspended. That's just it. There is no, well, I don't agree with you. I'm gonna appeal it. No, no. You get 2 games, sit down. That's just it. There is no argument with it. So for me, it's really weird sometimes when they go through the tribunal and the MRO and then the MRO appeals when it just goes haywire because I feel it's overcomplicating something that shouldn't be that difficult. Now, again, do I think Michael Christensen and the MRO is perfect? Absolutely not. There are things that he doesn't suspend that he probably should have, aka as we said, the Hipwood situation. And there were things that I
Mm.
don't think were suspendable that have been suspended. So it's like it's the proverbial the circus game of the three bowls with the ball, and you try to find which bowl has the ball. And sometimes
Yeah.
I feel like that's how Michael Christensen hands out his decisions. He puts a bowl in the ball, that's the suspension. He has two that are non-suspensions, and he just rolls them around. And then whichever one he picks up, that's the one he picks. It's there's no rhyme or reason to it. Okay, we'll go to one that I know you were probably definitely into it. The Charlie Cameron tackle on against the West Coast player. Personally, and again, this is me. I worry that tackle probably should have been suspended because if you watch Charlie Cameron's feet, he's driving. Yes, I know Duggan is falling backward, or Cole or whoever he tackled was falling backwards. I get that.
Liam Duggan.
I get
Yeah.
that argument. But if you watch Charlie Cameron's feet, he's driving. Again, I did offensive line in high school. I know our
Mm.
coaches talk us all the time of putting your toes into the ground and driving forward. If
Yeah.
you watch Charlie
Yeah.
Cameron's feet, he does.
Absolutely. It was like
He
a rugby
does.
league action, wasn't it?
He does. So that's where the people that are like, well, he had no control. No, he didn't. He had plenty of control because he's driving into it. He probably should have been suspended. Again, I'm not going to litigate it because they and literally, as I found it interesting, he gets off not because they agreed that that they proved that the tackle wasn't dangerous. No,
Yeah.
they got him off on a legal technicality, which is the same thing that happened with Crippa the year he won the
Yes.
Brownlow.
Yeah.
And for me,
Ironic.
that's a travesty. That's a
Yeah.
travesty because it wasn't footy related that got him off. And that's the part
Yeah.
that's frustrating for me. Get this legal crap out of here, okay? If I wanted legal crap in my sport, I do something, some kind of sport that involves a lawyer getting a case study, okay? I don't want that. I want footy
Yeah.
being footy. I want it to be simplified, to make it very simple. I know black and white, some people are terrified because accidents happen. I understand that. But if you black and white stuff, again, everybody's like, I'll go off another one, and I know it's a Lions legend. I don't mean to attack him, but Jonathan Brown on the couch after the Toby Bedford and Charlie Cameron was like, "Oh my God, the fabric of the game!" And he literally went for a 3 minute diatribe about how the game is buggered. And I went, "Dude, how many tackles were suspended that round?
Yeah. Yeah.
Three. How many
Yeah.
tackles were laid during the season or during that particular round? There was like over 400. So less than 1%,
Yeah.
less than 1% is suspendable. There's this hyperbole. It was like with the bump, like when everybody was getting suspended for
Yeah.
bumps. Everybody's, the bump is dead. The bump is dead. No, it's not. The front on bump is dead, you
Yeah.
morons.
Or the head
Because
high bump.
exactly, those
Yeah.
are dead. Why? Because this isn't the 1970s where nobody cared. It isn't a gladiator
Yeah.
sport that so many
Yeah.
people like to make this off to be. It's not. It is a sport of extreme skill that has tackling. It is not a gladiator sport. Nobody dies on the field. Stop using an antiquated term that is completely irrelevant. And again, I understand, okay? But the bump is not dead. The bump is very much alive. I see bumps all the time when they're
Yeah.
side on, hip and shoulders. Those bumps
Yeah.
perfectly legal. Tackles are perfectly legal. You just have to be more intelligent when you go in for tackles. I mean, it's very, very simple. These players will figure it out. They're smart. They have. They even put up the statistic. There are less suspensions this year because of dangerous tackles than there were last year. There, it is almost a third. There were 30 suspensions going into round 19 last year. There were 7 this year.
Mm.
That shows you that this tackles is not a big deal. People are making a big deal because there's a spotlight on it. That's it. Okay. So I hate to go on my diatribe on this one. I'm sorry, Lori, but it's just the hyperbole of some of these announcers and some of these experts is just very infuriating because you were going to a level that was never necessary, but because of click factor and because of you said it, it's not that big a deal. Okay. Is it a
Yeah.
worrying sign? Absolutely. Yeah, I will give you that.
Yeah.
It is absolutely worrying that players are getting rubbed out for tackles. Okay. But both of those tackles in question, there's a way I could see they probably should have been. Were they?
Mm.
No, they got off on a technicality. Should they have? Absolutely. And the Davies one from Gold Coast, that was clear as day. Like anybody that thought that wasn't is not paying attention. Lockie Jones is probably about that far from a broken neck. That far.
Yeah.
Because you can't come in that recklessly, especially when a player is head over the ball. You cannot be that
Yeah.
reckless. So,
I think the whole I think the reason why there's space for hyperbole is because the water is a bit muddy at the moment when it
mhm,
comes to tackling and not just at AFL level, but we need to
mhm.
decide what we want for AFL level And then we need to adjust how we deal at community level and youth level and junior level. If we're going to have the head at the forefront of our decisions, as we should, now that we know the lifelong impacts of CTE, we really need an um, established, considered tackling education program from youth right through. And so there is that confusion at the moment, and it's just that messy sort of transition period. And we'll get through this, and we'll be just fine. But for now, I guess it fills up newspaper columns, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's very easy. It's very easy to put the fear factor into it, and I think it's people being lazy a little bit. And like again, Jonathan Brown's a hell of a player, but this is him being lazy. It's him just it's him capitalizing on the fear of this because they're old school fans that are the physicality of footy is disappearing. No, it's not. It's not disappearing. There's still so much physical play in footy. It's just that some of the physicality that you were used to in the late 80s and the early and the 70s, it's gone. You can't
Yeah.
clothesline a guy nowadays. You just can't. You can't have melees at quarter time. You just can't because
Mm.
we now know because of science and because of medical research, we now know if you take enough hits to the head, bad things happen. That's just the way
Absolutely.
it is. So I want the best for these players, but it's almost coming to the point where it's like you almost feel like, okay, the players are just going to have to sign a waiver going, I know my risks. I know my brain could get absolutely destroyed, but I still want to play. Like that's the way
Yeah.
it seems like that it's going. Like they're literally just going to be like, bugger it, I'll play, sign away my
Yeah.
life, and just hope because that's just the way it is. You're not going to get as many players challenging and doing suing and doing any kind of class action lawsuit after probably 2015 because CTE was discussed. So you can't say that
Mm.
we didn't know about it. The guys in the 70s
Yeah.
and the 80s and the 90s had no idea. It was the same thing.
Absolutely.
It was the
Yeah.
same thing over here. Now, over here, they knew about it. They just didn't say anything. Over there,
Yeah.
you knew about it. Okay. It pretty much came out. Everybody started to know about it in the early 2000s, late 2000s, early 2010s. So you're not going to see those class actions probably after about 2009, 2010. Okay. You're not,
Mm.
anybody pre that may have an argument because they weren't informed that your brain could be absolutely destroyed if you get hit in the
Yeah.
head enough. So
And I think some of those class actions, it's not necessarily about the tackle that caused the CT or the multiple instances. It's actually more about the fact that they were sent straight back out and were not
and
given
the
any
long-term
time at all
effects
to
too.
recover. And so most players these days there's an enforceable period, but even for quite a few years before that, there was a common sense period. But certainly in the 70s and 80s, they were just sent back out, and it was
You
a
just got
source
your
of
bell
pride,
rung. Stay
wasn't it?
out there.
Yeah.
You awake, son? Smelling salts. You awake, son? Good. Get back onto small forward. I'm
Yeah,
not
so
trying.
those poor
Sorry, I'm
blokes
not
never
trying to
stood a
laugh at
chance.
that, but unfortunately that was the way it was. It's again, I'm not saying it's right, but I mean, because we know a lot more than they did at that particular time period. So I didn't, like I said, didn't mean to go on a diatribe in there, but it was just the hyperbole over the last couple of weeks has just done my head in, and I wanted to discuss that because I think there's too many people jumping. They're jumping the shark on this whole thing. It's like simmer down. It'll get figured out. It's just we can't sit
Yeah,
here and we're throwing chum in the water to the people, the parents that are like, oh, I don't want my kid getting CTE. They're not going to play footy. You've just chummed the water even more for that to happen. When you
yeah.
say stuff like that, like you're doing
Mm.
harm to the game more than you're helping it. So we'll go back to the footy here. So 5 rounds to go. 5 rounds to go in this home and away season. We both did it. We both did a predictor ladder, which I can't wait to hear your final eight on this one. Do you think the final spot in the eight comes down to round 24?
Yes, I do. Because for me, it will come down to percentage to get that eighth and ninth spot. So I did the ladder predictor, which was fun because I hadn't done that before. So
It's
This was
fun,
my
isn't
first run through it.
it?
It's heaps of fun. It really makes you think. But yeah, I've got it down to percentage. So yeah, I do think it'll go down to the final round.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I 100% like I have a feeling that Sunday afternoon footy and Sunday twilight footy, I don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep round 24 because it's going to be so intriguing to see because I know last year they had every goal that they had the live ladder and they were changing it and everything like that. It is very intriguing. So I'll be fascinated to see when round 24's fixture comes out how many of those teams that are in that 7 to 11 spot,
Yeah.
if not all of them, are in that particular those time slots on Sunday because it's going to make for absolutely scintillating television. Cannot wait for that.
And
So
it's 2024 has been uniquely close. So the AFL will be absolutely thrilled. It's really been engaging for the fans. And yeah, it's definitely not set yet, that's for sure.
and nobody's up to the top 13 spots are still up for chances to make finals. So it's I think they said it was a couple weeks ago they said it was the first time into round 18 that the 13th spot in the ladder actually had a winning record. So
Yeah.
it's going to be very interesting these last 5 rounds. So and then my last question in the burning questions, as I say, is when I have a fan of a team, I like to ask them a question about that just so then they can humbly brag or talk about their team. So, as a Lions fan, Lori, can this Lions team finally get over the hump and win a premiership?
Uh, so I will always say yes. Um, we do have some concerns at the moment. We're running out of defenders. We've
Mhm.
gone through a heck of a lot of defenders with injuries, and now with Harris Andrews out with concussion, we're really quite short on tall defenders. So there's even some talk of possibly sending Hipwood back because we're the tallest defender we have is Froggy Lester at this point. It's been quite a concern. But look, if we all fire on the same day, we're close to unstoppable. Our best footy is absolutely up there with the best. I was really encouraged to see how we went against Sydney on the weekend to see a Zach Bailey finally step up this season after his injury and perform really admirably. And Cam Rayner, we all knew he had it in him, but holy dooly, did he have it in him? It was an absolute monster performance from him. But we have capable players all around the ground who are now finally linking up really nicely to get out of the D50 and into the forward 50. You never know what you're going to get with Joe, which always makes for interesting watching.
Very much
And now
so.
I think you kind of have to shrug your shoulders and just Joe just has to play on. He's not as good with the set shots, although he made his set shots on the weekend, but he just wheels and kicks and it seems to kind of work. So he looks like he's got a better connection with Charlie Cameron now. It looked like that connection wasn't really there earlier in the season, but that seems to have been able to right itself, certainly in the game against Sydney on the weekend. So I'm pretty encouraged by that. It's nice to have Will Ashcroft back in. That's going to take some time. There's absolutely no pressure on Will there. He might not really get firing until next year. It can take quite a while to come back from an ACL, but I am a bit concerned about our defensive stocks. We're really low at the moment.
Yeah, and the worst part is you face Gold Coast with Ben King, who's probably trying to find a way to get his stuff figured out. So it'll be very interesting to see how that one goes. But I'm with you. Like Brisbane on their day is one of the best in the comp. Like they're in that Sydney, Carlton, Brisbane, Fremantle, if
Yeah,
depending on who you talk to, are probably I think the four fly. I think that's going to be the top four. Honestly,
yeah,
I'm
me too.
let me look at my ladder predictor. Is that my top four? Holy shnikes, I did. And I didn't even plan that. That's my top four. We'll discuss that just here in a little bit because as Laurie said, I love to do the ladder predictor with 5 rounds to go because it's far enough away you don't want to jump there, but it's short enough that you can do it relatively easy on the ladder predictor. In fact, actually, you know what? Let's have some fun. Let's move the ladder predictor results up. We'll do my team of the week and power rankings just after this. So we each
Okay.
did it. I had to do mine late because I was running around like a chuck with my head cut off over the last couple of days, getting a few things done around the house. So let's go to it. We know top spot's probably going to be the same. I have the Sydney Swans. I bet you probably have Sydney at one as well. Okay. Number
Yep.
two, who's sitting in that second spot for you after the last 5 rounds?
So I actually have Carlton as number two.
Okay. I do too as well. I have Carlton as well. Only 4 points back from Sydney. I have Sydney dropping a couple of games over these last 5 rounds and reducing that lead down to 1 game in percentage. So, all right. Number three, who do you have in the third spot?
I have the Lions in number three, and they're there on percentage.
All right. I have Brizzy there on percentage as well. And fourth, as I kind of already said, is Fremantle for me. Do you have Frio at four as well?
Yeah, I have Freo at four.
Oh, we're looking like we're thinking the same here. Now here's where the fun part is. 5 through 8. We'll start with five. Who do you have at five?
Yeah, so with a bullet, I have the Hawks five.
All righty.
I'm very plucky on the Hawks,
I have the
actually.
I have the Cats by percentage. I have the Cats by
Oh, okay.
percentage over the Hawks, who are sixth, only a few percentage points behind. I haven't played with the percentage as much as I probably did, but I have the Hawks in sixth as well. I have the Hawks sixth, fifth in the Cats. Okay. Who do you have as sixth then?
I have the doggies at six.
Okay, doggies at six.
And from a percentage point of view, over the Cats in seventh.
All right, and then we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna leave a little bit of fun here. We're gonna jump. Who just missed? Who are 10th and ninth on your ladder predictor?
So I have Ken Hinkley's Port coming ninth and missing out by just a couple of percent. Sorry, Ken. And then I have the Suns coming in 10th.
Okay, I have the Bombers in 10th. And like you, I have Port in ninth. So I take it that GWS and the Western Bulldogs are your 8 and 7.
Yeah, so I've got the Cats in seventh and then GWS in eighth.
Yep, yep. So what a fan! That's going to be a fantastic finals if either or. So I have Giants in eighth. So if we did the finals off of our ladder predictors, I would have Giants v Cats at GMHBA Stadium and Doggies versus Hawks. The other
Gonna be nice,
elimination,
won't it?
I would have Fremantle coming to Sydney in the first qualifying final, and Brisbane going down to most likely the MCG to play Carlton in the other qualifying final. What a finals if that is our eight. That would be absolutely insane. For those that want to know, I have the Pies finishing 12th and the Suns finishing in 11th. So unfortunately, I think the Pies just too much ground to make up on that one. D's finishing 13th, and we'll stop there because after that, it really is irrelevant after
Yeah.
13th. So is the ladder predictor so much fun. Like you could literally, I've done it before where I've literally went through and I've went, oh, I'm going to change this and literally change one game. And then I go to the ladder and I go, what did it change? And sometimes it makes a drastic bit of difference. So it's fun to do, but it also as a fan sometimes can be infuriating because you go, okay, well, what if my team loses this game? Okay, and then you go back. It's very fun to just you kind of tease yourself a little bit. You're like, okay, what if this happens? Whoa, that really changes it. Like I'll tell you one that I have on my screen right now. It's in round, let's see, round 22. I have tipped Brisbane over GWS, but if I flip that tip, GWS jumps to fourth and Brisbane falls all the way to seventh if
Oh,
that result
wow.
stays that way. Just in round 22, one result because of the points difference because of the draws and everything like that. GWS, if they were to win that game against Brizzy at the GABA,
Yeah.
in round 22 and all the results stayed the same the way I had it, GWS would leap to fourth and play Sydney in the qualifying final. Fremantle would jump to third, and Brisbane would jump and then have to go to the G as well to play Hawthorn in an
Yeah, we don't want
elimination
to do
final.
that. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it
the
just it
AFL are just rubbing their hands together at the moment, aren't they? It's so
well,
exciting.
like we'll have some other fun. Also in that same round, Optus Stadium sees Fremantle versus the Geelong Cats. I tipped Fremantle. If I switch that tip, Fremantle drops out of the top four down to sixth, and Geelong
Oh,
leaps up to third. And Geelong would
okay.
then play Carlton. Brisbane would drop to fourth and play Sydney at the SCG.
Oh,
It just
yeah.
it just shows it just shows you one result tipped one way could completely flip the ladder. We'll do it again. That same round, Carlton v Hawthorn at the MCG. I have the Hawks as my tip currently. If I switch it to Carlton, Hawthorn falls out of the top eight and down to ninth. Port jumps in to the eight.
Oh, oh, yeah.
It just shows you one game could, with the ladder the way it is this year, one game could
Yeah.
completely flip some of these results. So this is going to be so much fun. The ladder watching is going to be epic for sure. So
That is crazy.
that's the fun of the ladder predictor for those that have not done it. Give it a try. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, you could it could cause you to get addicted and you're going to want to do it for hours and hours and hours. But it's so much fun sometimes because you can see how one result can completely flip. Like I said, just in round 22, there are three games between top eight sides that if the result goes one way, it could completely flip the ladder. And that's just one round. I could probably go through and look at a couple of different rounds here. Um, GWS versus Fremantle in round 23. Same thing. At this present point, I have GWS tipped. If I flip that tip to Fremantle, Fremantle becomes second on the ladder. GWS falls out of the eight down to ninth. That shows you how tight this ladder
Oh, wow.
is. One tip from in the eight and Fremantle fourth to Fremantle second and GWS out of the eight because of percentage. So it just shows you how crazy this thing could go. So it's a lot of fun. So alrighty, we will get to Coach Hess's team of the week really quickly. So we don't want to be here too much later. It is getting late for Lori. I don't want her to stay up. I want her to get her beauty rest. So, team of the week this week, we start with the defenders as a coach at the fullback line. And again, as for my metrics that I do with this, I tend to put a little bit more emphasis on goals and score involvements just because it changes the game a little bit more impact. So you may hear some names you probably may not expect for some. So fullback line, we see GWS's Harry Perryman, Melbourne's Stephen May, and Brisbane's Dane Zorko. At the halfback line, we see Tom Stewart of the Geelong Cats, Richmond's Daniel Rioli, and North Melbourne's Harry Sheasel. On the wings, yes, I put wings in my team. I don't do like the All Australian and just chuck center midfielders out on the wing. I don't do that. On the wing, St. Kilda's Mason Wood and Western Bulldogs Adam Treloar are my wings
Yeah,
for this
nice.
particular game. In the ruck, we see Essendon's Sam Draper. In the centers, in the guts, we see Ed Richards of the Western Bulldogs, Port Adelaide's Connor Rosey, and Brisbane's Hugh McCluggage. In the forward line, at the half forward line, we see Jamara Ugle-Hagan from the Western Bulldogs, Adelaide's Ben Keys, and St. Kilda's Tim Membry. In the full forward line, we see Charlie Curnow of the Carlton Blues, Hawthorn's Luke Bruce, and Fremantle's Sonny Walters. On the bench, I do one defender, one ruck, one mid, one forward. And the defender, I have Essendon's Mason Redman. The ruck is St. Kilda's Rowan Marshall. The midfielder is Massimo D'Ambrosio of the Hawthorn Hawks.
Yeah.
And the forward is Hawthorn's Connor McDonald. And that
Okay.
is my team of the week. Real quick, your thoughts, Lori?
Oh, geez, not many lines in there. There's only two. No, I thought that was really good. I can't think of anyone.
So many fours and
I was
fives
really
for
glad to
goal
hear Ben
kicks.
Key's in there.
Yeah, well, Benny Keys kick five, and my with my forwards, I tend to it's like the top six goal kickers. I just make it
Yeah.
simple, so it's like that's the reason
Yes.
why like Danaher didn't get in there because he only had three, where he had six with four like there was like seven or eight with four or five. So it was absolutely mental how many goals were kicked by some of these players this week. So no,
It
I get it.
was a big round, wasn't it?
Had to chuck Hugh McCluggage in there. He kicks three goals from the center mid slash wing position that he plays, and he's a lot of fun to watch. So couldn't not get him. And Dane Zorko, I know he kind of shifts up to the halfback line, but he usually starts in the pocket. Sometimes he can go back there. So I tend to, he usually finds a way to get big numbers because he shifts up a little bit. So sometimes I think I
Yeah.
probably shouldn't have him as a fullback. I probably should have him as a halfback, but it was one of those couldn't not get Zorko in there. He was quite impactful for the Lions in this particular game. So, and then the other section, my homage to the fourth and long part of the podcast, and that is power rankings. And I do the previous 5 rounds. So the last 5 rounds. It's a what have you done for me lately? Top five. At five, the Fremantle Dockers. At four, the GWS Giants. Number three, the Western Bulldogs. At two, the Hawthorne Hawks. And at one, da 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 da, the Brisbane Lions. So
Oh,
hey, you win 7 in a row. There's nobody even
yeah.
close. You got to have Brisbane at the top of the power rankings for sure. So we get to the end of the podcast, which is my favorite. I know we're still early in the week. There's still injury lists and everything like that, but we got a tip. We got to know who we think's going to come out on top on the weekend. Let's jump to it, Lori. A cracker at Marvel Stadium as Port Adelaide jump over from South Australia to take on Carlton. Who do you like in this one?
Eve, Tom de Koning's a big out for Carlton, but I'm going to go Carlton.
I'm gonna go Carlton. I think Pitnet steps in. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. Pitnet will do exactly what they need. Unfortunately, with Soldo, it's sweet. No matter who Port Adelaide puts there, I think Pitnet still has a big advantage. This is going to be a fun midfield battle. You've got Cripps, you've got Walsh, you've got Rosie, you've got Butters, you've got Jason Horn Francis, you've got Adam Chera, you've got George
Yeah.
Hewitt. Holy crap, this midfield battle is going to be mental. Think
Yeah.
Carlton's got a little too much. I think defensively they're a little bit more sound. Port Adelaide can go to sea at times, and especially when you've got the two monsters of when you got the monster that is Charlie Curnow. Mackay not playing, I think brings Port back into the game a little bit,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
their smalls are extremely dangerous, and I'm not sure if Port's tall-ish backline can handle the mosquito fleet that'll be around Charlie Curnow. So I think Carlton's just a little bit too good in that one. So I have Carlton in that one. An interesting one down at GMHBA at Blundstone Arena down in Hobart as
Mm.
North hosts the Cats licking their wounds after that nip by the doggies. They take a Rouge team that is playing well. I'm going to tip the Cats in this one, but I'm going to say it.
Oh,
If I had to tip an upset, this I think could be it. North close. I'm going to tip the Cats, but North is my roughie. North is the team. If you forced me to do an upset tip, North would be my pick.
oh, North and Tassie, you can't go past them, and they're coming in with a bit of form, even though it was a loss. So I didn't think the Cats they didn't impress me much at all on the weekend. So I'm going North.
All right. So an interesting one for you, ma'am. The Q Clash. Gold Coast hosts the Brisbane Lions at People's First Arena, whatever the heck they like to name it. Head versus heart. Unfortunately, as you said, no Harris Andrews. Can they take
Mm.
down this Suns team that have been damn near unbeatable at home?
Yeah, this is actually really hard for me to say, but if I had to tip, I would actually tip Gold Coast. Q clashes are notorious for throwing up um, surprising results. And this is home for the Gold Coast. Our defense is going to be depleted, although you could probably argue their offense is a bit depleted at the moment too, even if they're on the field.
Mhm.
But yeah, I find Gold Coast really rise to the occasion here, and so I'm actually going to tip them. Sorry, Lions fans.
You're good. And I actually was going to apologize to you because I was going to tip Gold Coast. I think Harris Andrews out is a big one, as you said. They're
Huge.
right now they're being held. Their back line is kind of a next man in type of situation. And unfortunately, when you face a team that can get on you quickly, if Anderson and Tuke Miller in their midfield can get up again, they're facing Lockie Neal, and again, this is the battle of the undervalued ruck of
Mm,
Jared Witz versus Oscar McInerney. Or I don't know, Witz may be out, so maybe Ned Moyle. But if Witz is back, that's a fun matchup between those two because they're not talked about, but they're both really good at ruck. And then you
yeah,
have the star power, Miller and Rowell and Anderson versus McCluggage, Neal, Ashcroft, and and Dunkley. So it's going to be a fun one. Whoever gets the dominance out of the midfield, Gold Coast at home, they just have this special sauce. I'm going to tip them.
Yeah,
But Brisbane again, you've got Danaher, you've got Hipwood, you've got Charlie Cameron, you've got enough offense to be able to kind of, if you need to
yeah,
make it a score fest, I think you've got the advantage if it becomes a shootout. I'm gonna tip Gold
yeah,
Coast, but Brisbane into this up to their eyeballs. That'll be a fun one. A scary game for the Dons as they play as they go to Marvel Stadium to take on the Saints. Again, the dour Saints. Can they
yeah.
pull the upset and dash Essendon's chances of making finals as they are holding on by their fingernails to stay in the finals? I'm going to tip the Dons in this one. I think their offense and Sammy Draper's playing pretty well. Rowan Marshall may towel up Draper here, so can Essendon even out the clearance contest in this one? Essendon's defense, I think, is just good enough to hold them off. Dons win this one, but this is a little terrifying because the Saints can come up with a good game here and there. It'll be interesting to how Coach Ross handles this one. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I think it'll be a close one, but I'm actually picking the Saints. I think it'll just be another sort of dour game, unfortunately. But I think the Saints are better at the arm wrestle, so I'm going to pick them.
That'll be a fun one. That'll be an interesting one for sure. We have an absolute classic at the MCG as the Demons host the GWS Giants. I hate this one because honestly, my tip changes if Gone is back. If Gone is back, I tip the
Ah.
D's. I know it's weird because Gone will be coming off an injury, but
Mm,
I'm going to tip GWS right now because as of right now, Gone is not playing. As of right
yeah.
now, Gone is not playing. So I'm going to tip GWS because I think Kieran Briggs will just have a field day against Petty and Van Royen and whoever he takes on. If Gone is back in, it becomes a much more 50-50 coin toss game for me. And being at home, being at the G, the D's would have the advantage. Tipping Giants, thinking D's if Max Gone comes back.
Well, yeah. Um, I think it'd be a lot closer if Gorn's back, but I'd still be tipping the Giants, and at this stage, tipping them by quite a bit.
That completely makes sense on this one. An interesting one. The Western Derby is always a fun one because usually it
Mm.
throws all sorts of curveballs. I just don't see it happening. Fremantle, and I think Fremantle big.
Yeah, me too. I don't see much upside in the Eagles at the moment.
Yeah, a fun one. MCG, Collingwood, Richmond. I'm going to say this now. I'm going to tip Collingwood, but I'll say this right now. It will not shock me a bit if Richmond finds a way to nip Collingwood and completely close the book on Collingwood this season, which would be, for many non-Collingwood fans, would be absolutely spectacular. Tipping pies, but thinking Richmond are a roughie in this one.
Yeah, really tough one, isn't it? Collingwood have got a few outs, but um, yeah, that's really tough, actually.
hmm
I think I will go Pies because I think there's a lot of pride on the line for them this week. Um, but yeah, go Tigers.
Yeah. Fun one for me. SCG doggies come up to the SCG to take on the Swans, who are still kind of reeling after the injuries that kind of plagued them at the GABA. Who do you like in this one?
Oh, I think Swans at home, even with your injuries, but that's going to be a cracking game.
Doggies really pushed Sydney earlier in the year, and this is a Sydney Swans team that's got a few injuries. I'm a little bit frightened by this one. I'm still going to tip the Swans. I think home cooking, they've played really well at home. I hoping Rowbottom is back. I'm not expecting it. If Rowbottom, I think Cal Mills will step in for Rampy. You probably see a Sam Wicks or maybe even a Caden Cleary come in for Papley. I think they'll be okay. I don't think it's as disastrous as people make it off. Rampy will be the biggest loss. Does Mills go back and be that halfback flanker, kind of shift Fox back into that halfback pocket to kind of make up for the loss of Rampy? If they can do that, it'll be interesting. Does James Jordan take Ed Richards? Does he take Bailey Dale? Does he take Bontempelli? There's a few questions when it comes to matchups here that'll be fascinating. Can Brody Grundy bounce back against Tim English and have a little bit of a better game after Oscar McInerney really was the better rock on that day? An absolute classic. Again, tipping Swans, but the doggies are in this one. They are going to be up and about in this one. And if Rory Lobb is continuing his form, it's going to be interesting to see how Sydney attacks the tallish backline of the Western Bulldogs. Can they maybe
Yeah.
use some shorter kicks and kind of attack them via the handball? It'll be fun to watch on that
Yeah.
one. And a cracking one that I think is very intriguing to end the round, Adelaide Oval. Adelaide Crows host the hot Hawthorn Hawks. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I think Hawks will get it, but Adelaide Crows at home are always a very tough game. And they certainly showed that they had the firepower on Friday night against Essendon. But I think Hawks are on a roll, and I wouldn't be betting against them at the moment.
I will say it this way. If this was last year's Crows, I would tip the Crows by just the littlest bit. But this year's Crows team is just not the same. There's just something a little bit off. Hawks are playing incredible footy. They embrace being they've embraced tough atmospheres. They embraced it against Collingwood. They embraced it against Geelong. I think they embraced the Adelaide Oval. They come to play. Hawks win this one. But a good game. Ben Keys will be fun to see. Can he back up a really good performance with another one? Unfortunately, sometimes he has those on and off games. So it'll be interesting to see. And
Yeah.
can the Hawks continue this play devil may care type of attitude, just go out and play footy? It'll be fun. So that's going to be an interesting, very fascinating game to end the round. So, and Lori, that is it. That is all 9 rounds tipped. We have gone through the podcast. This has been an incredibly fun chat. I thoroughly enjoy sitting down and having a chat with you. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much for hopping on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Donnie. I had lots of fun.
Yeah, it's always a trip. It's always just so much fun to sit here and talk footy and to be able to kind of take yourself out of your own team and kind of discuss the competition as a whole is always so much fun. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe. We have more footy coverage still to come. If you haven't seen it, my latest interview with Sandford W player Jess Bates of the Tigers is out. It is a fantastic chat. She is an absolute ripper and an amazing young woman and footy player that to boot. So if you get a chance, please listen to that. It is a great chat. And we will be back with more footy coverage very, very soon.